Over the past 8 months, 30 teams have battled for NBA supremacy. And while 28 have failed, the two most deserving teams remain to now emerge onto the grandest stage, the NBA Finals, to claim one last victory, vanquish one last foe, and complete the climb to basketball immortality. For one, it is the chance at a first title.
And we will win in Toronto.
For the other, it is a chance to enhance a dynasty.
For the first time in over 50 years, the NBA will see a team go to the finals for 5 straight seasons.
The marathon has been run, but the victor remains to be named. The Toronto Raptors, the Golden State Warriors. Welcome to the NBA Finals. And with that, what is good, streaming people? Welcome to our NBA Finals preview show right here on CBS Sports HQ. I'm your host, Tommy Tran. Next to me is NBA champion Rip Hamilton and 2001 Finals participant and co-host of Cannell and Bell, Raja Bell. Gentlemen, it's been since Game 6 of the Rockets-Warriors. We were all together previewing it. Here we are in the NBA Finals. We're going to be answering a lot of questions coming up as well. Also want to bring in our Colin Ward-Henniger from the Bay Area, the HQ West Coast Bureau. He spent time, of course, with the Warriors covering them the past few seasons. Going to give us some great insight into the dubs, the days, and the weeks before leading up to this Game 1. So, Colin, stand by. We'll get back to you in just a second. But, gentlemen, let's just start with your overall thoughts on this NBA Finals. And, Rip, we'll start with you.
No, I think that when you looked at the beginning of the season, these are two of the best teams in their respectable conference. I had Toronto coming out the East. I just thought that defensively at every position they can guard. You got Kawhi Leonard, the former Finals MVP. I thought this was the moment that this country has been waiting for years. And when you look at the Golden State Warriors, this team been here for multiple years. They got some of the best players in our game, and should be an exciting series.
Yeah, this is, for me, the question revolves around Kevin Durant, right? The uncertainty about whether he's going to be available to them or not. And then what this series turns into, if they determine that he's not available and it gets deeper into the series, and now you're looking at the guys. We talked about Toronto's secondary guys, having to play better, but you also have guys, as the series gets deeper for Golden State, that are going to have to be productive off that bench that haven't really been called on to do that.
Let's welcome back Colin Ward-Henniger. Colin, Dub Nation, the Warriors, what sort of, again, this is old hat for them, but what's sort of the theme from the Bay Area where you're at right now and what they're talking about here in the NBA Finals?
Well, I think they're pretty excited just to be playing an opponent other than Cleveland. It's not that they didn't like playing Cleveland, but now they have some new blood in there, and I think with a team like the Warriors who's been there, done that, they've seen pretty much every playoff scenario the last 5 seasons, they're excited to be playing a new team, going to a new city, starting the finals on the road. So they had their time to rest. They're recuperated. They're, for the most part, healthy except for Kevin Durant. And, of course, Demarcus Cousins is still questionable. But the guys who were playing have gotten some rest, both mentally and physically, and I think they're excited to take on this new challenge.
Colin, thank you very much. And again, your question marks with the Warriors and how healthy they're going to be. And let's start with Kevin Durant. We do know that he's not going to play tonight in Game 1. Had that strained right calf suffered against the Rockets there in the second round of the series. Rip, let's talk about Kevin Durant. And obviously, here's the play here against Houston. They've had 5 games now without KD. How much do you think they still need him now going into this first game and how they played without him?
Well, I think they really need him in this series against Toronto. I think when you looked at the Portland series, they didn't get Kevin Durant because of the Portland Trailblazers. They was running through the Portland Trailblazers before Kevin Durant. So a lot of people make a big deal about how great they were in that series. They didn't need Kevin Durant to get through them. I thought the matchup was perfect for them. Now going against a Toronto Raptors team that got a guy that can play like LeBron James. I'm not going to say he's better than LeBron James, but a guy that has the same type of impact as LeBron James on both sides of the floor. You need a guy like Kevin Durant to take that pressure off of Steph Curry, off of Klay Thompson, because we know about their struggles, especially in the finals. It's a reason why Steph Curry has never got MVP of the finals, because teams were able to kind of take him totally out of the game. So now you're playing against a team that has elite defenders. They got 2 guys on their team that were former Defensive Player of the Year, and offensively, Kawhi Leonard is playing probably the best basketball of his career. So I think that, they really need Kevin Durant to get through this series. You can't believe the hype to say, okay, Klay Thompson and Steph Curry is playing incredible basketball. Draymond Green is a much better player. He's a lot more productive without no KD. But when the game slows down, KD is the only player on their roster that they can give the ball to and everybody can get out the way.
Yeah, that's exactly why he was almost an insurance policy, believe it or not, for Golden State in series like they had against Cleveland when Cleveland had success really grinding the game to a halt, really keying in on Steph and Klay and being able to take them away. Well, you give the ball to Kevin Durant, nobody on the planet can stop him, right? And so that's what they miss in this series if Toronto can control the tempo of the games, right? If those games are fast-paced, they're getting up and down the court, Steph and Klay are able to run around screens and come up pick and rolls free, shooting jump shots, that's a bad recipe for Toronto. But if Toronto can control the pace, they get into some ISO with Kawhi, they've got all these great defenders, a guy like Kevin Durant will sorely be missed.
All right, well, we're having a couple of other people that we have here on this hour-long special for Game 1 of the NBA Finals. We have Reed Forgrave, who's been covering this series for us, joins us there from Toronto. Reed, good to have you. So, again, we know Kevin Durant will not play in Game 1. What was the talk about him potentially playing in Game 2?
Well, he has traveled here, but if you're asking me, I'm guessing it is a pretty remote possibility. What Steve Kerr said yesterday when he said he is definitely out for Game 1, he also said that he needs to get in some individual work before he can get back even to the practice court, and he wants him to have some practices in before he goes out and plays. I would say the chance of seeing KD in a Game 2, even though he did travel to Toronto, highly unlikely.
All right, that's the latest there on Kevin Durant. Let's go to Colin then once again. So, Colin, as we've seen the Warriors sort of navigate life without Kevin Durant, again, you spent a lot of time with this team. What else were they saying about playing without their superstar?
Well, I think the biggest thing is they all say, of course, they need Kevin Durant. There's a reason why he came to this team and the reason why they've won the last 2 championships with him. But they've also said that this has kind of renewed their focus, especially Draymond Green, talking about the way he's playing, the way that he's facilitating this offense. Says, it's only natural when somebody of Durant's caliber goes down, you have the inclination to step up. And he thinks everybody on the roster, from top to bottom, Steve Kerr's been playing pretty much everyone. Damian Jones got a start. I mean, he's relying on Alfonso McKinney. So this entire roster has gotten a jolt from the fact that Durant is gone. Now, as Rip mentioned, of course, there might be times during the Toronto series where they'll need Kevin Durant, but the rest of this roster definitely seems rejuvenated after Durant's injury.
All right, Colin, certainly appreciate it. Going back to Reed Forgrave, because the Dubs are injured beyond Kevin Durant. Maybe a little bit more optimistic about Boogie Cousins, officially listed as questionable. Reed, what more can you tell us on that front?
I believe he wants us to call him Demarcus now. I keep slipping into the Boogie thing, too. But Demarcus is listed as questionable for Game 1. It sounds like there is a real chance that he can play. Steve Kerr said that he has been scrimmaging and he's looked good in scrimmages. He worries about that idea of just kind of tossing him right in there. Draymond Green had the most beautiful Draymond-y thing ever that he said. Demarcus, he doesn't have playoff experience. He hasn't played basketball for 16 of the past 19 months. Dropping him into the finals, it's like taking a suburban private school kid and throwing him right into the hood. But he said that's our job as teammates to lift him up.
All right, Reed, thank you for the update there. Let's go back here in our Fort Lauderdale studios. Rip and Raja, again, the 2 updates on the Warriors stars and former All-Stars for that matter. Raja, I want to start with you, and we'll start with KD because you've suffered this strained calf before. And again, you talked about it when it happened, that the chances for him to play in that Portland series, 0 to none, which we saw. Again, the timetable now has been about 2 weeks, right? So again, Game 2 would be Sunday. What's the outlook for you, having experienced that before?
Look, personally, I don't anticipate Kevin Durant coming back in the finals. I don't think he'll play again.
At all?
At all, wow.
I mean, obviously, there's degrees of calf strain or torn muscle in your calf. The one that I dealt with, though, even if he were to come back, let's say, and he comes out, it's going to be a Willis Reed type of situation where he's dragging his leg around the court. You don't go from limping like he was coming off the plane the other day in Toronto to being able to run and jump 4 days later. It doesn't heal like that. You're talking about hurdles that you have to clear just from a precautionary standpoint with your team. Rip can attest to this. There's not a whole lot of practice going on right now. Like, he might get some individual work, be in the gym shooting some jump shots, but all that's scripted. You can protect your muscles when you're going through scripted motion. It's the unscripted stuff, the spontaneous movements that really subject a prior injury to further, further tears. I don't think you can you can protect him from those, and therefore I don't think they're going to roll him out there.
And see too, Tommy, I also was worried about it too, because when he first got injured, they didn't make a really big deal about it in-house. There wasn't a whole lot of communication to the media. They weren't talking about it. KD wasn't traveling with the team. And I was like, man, was it a little bit more serious than what they actually telling everybody else? And then I also thought maybe it was an Achilles, just on the simple fact that he kind of looked back at it, and you hear about guys always talking about when they have an Achilles injury, it's like somebody kicked them in the back of their foot. But you had that injury before. And like I said, I hear from, a lot of chirping in the background and people saying that he might not be able to come back in these finals. But if he can get out there and run, because KD doesn't really have to score for them in these finals. He just needs to be a decoy. He needs to be another player out there that can take the load off Steph and Klay Thompson, where Kawhi Leonard has to know that he's out on the floor.
Well, the thing about that injury, right, and yes, you could theoretically, like, I played with it. I wound up missing a game, and then I came back and played 2 more games in the series. I was a shell of myself.
Gotcha.
When I tell you, that when you go from limping the way he's limping, you don't get strength back. You don't trust that muscle. That muscle doesn't start firing again and heal in a span of 5 or 6 days. If that limp is still significant, as a player, you'll think in a couple days it's feeling better. Let me go ahead and try to play on that. But when you try to move on it, it's going to let you know, no, sir, we're not ready to do that yet. And so he'll be out on the court, but it'll be a matter of minutes before someone realizes that he can't do what he's supposed to do.
There's 2 things here with the KD thing, right? So right now he's doing his own workouts, but hasn't been clear to do on-court activities with the team. They're also kind of like, every few days we're going to give an update. We didn't really give a hard time. And then there's really what is the elephant in the room, which is the future of Kevin Durant, right? Because this injury, if he comes back too soon or re-aggravates it or whatever, can really hurt his potential. And obviously there's talk that he may not be in a Golden State uniform anymore. If you guys were in Kevin Durant's situation as players with this looming, how do you navigate that, Rip?
Well, if I'm Kevin Durant, first of all, we're going to take the money part off the table. He already made over $300 million from his basketball contract to his endorsement deal. So money is not a huge factor for him. I think for him, it's all about winning championships. If he got another opportunity to win a championship before he leaves this Golden State team, he's going to put forward to everything he has to go out there and try to complete that goal, because he knows whatever team he goes to, there's no guarantee that he's going to get another NBA championship or another ring. So in his mind, it's like, if I'm healthy enough to play on this biggest stage, I'm going to be ready to go out there and try to play.
Well, and yeah, I mean, so my situation was we were short bodies. We just didn't have enough people. So me at 70% was just another body that we could use. There is something to be said there for that and Kevin Durant. You're in the finals, so it can heal over the next few months if they really need your presence and your body on the court. He's so integral to what they do offensively, though. I'm not sure that he's going to be able to provide that. Going forward with him, this is a whole nother conversation maybe. The grass is usually greener when you're a player, right? You're looking around, you're seeing other organizations, you see other situations. You're like, man, it could be really good there. And it's not always greener when you get there.
Yeah.
That's one of those things. You've got such a great situation in Golden State. If they can keep it together, if you can win a championship this year, you're opening a new building in San Francisco. If I were Kevin Durant, I'd err on the side of staying in Golden State.
So the Warriors are going for their 3rd straight title, 4 in the last 5 years. And Kevin Durant, who they will not have in Game 1, as we talked about, presumably maybe not for the rest of the series, was a 2-time Finals MVP. So they will be shorthanded, yet they have the experience going into this NBA Finals with Steve Kerr. Again, 5 straight, the previous 4 against the Cleveland Cavaliers. How much do you think that they can use experience to bridge that gap talent-wise?
Well, I think that they're not playing against a team that doesn't have experience. That's the big thing. When you looked at Toronto Raptors playing against the Milwaukee Bucks, I think with them having the experience with Kawhi Leonard being there, Danny Green, Kyle Lowry playing in the Eastern Conference Final, same thing with Marc Gasol. I think these is 2 veteran teams that really can compete. And really now, if you look at Toronto's standpoint, they're happy to be here. You got a whole country behind you that's excited to be here. So I think they're going to come out and play loose. They're not going to have a whole lot of pressure on them, kind of similar to us when I was in Detroit playing against the Lakers. Everybody thought that the Lakers was supposed to win. Similar to this situation, everybody and their mama think Golden State Warriors is going to win this game, win this series. So if you're Toronto, yes, you're happy to be here, but now you can play loose. There's really no pressure on Kyle Lowry. The big thing for Kyle Lowry his whole entire career being in Toronto Raptors was getting to the NBA Finals. Now he's here. Now they can just go out there, have a good time, and play loose.
Well, I'll take the flip side of the argument, right? Like, let's say you're just happy being in the finals as a Toronto fan base and franchise that's never been there before. When I was with the Sixers in 2001, right, and we got to the finals, the city was on fire. It was almost like that in and of itself was the accomplishment, right? And so, you know, you get into the finals, and yeah, we stole game one, but we came up a little flat. So I think there could be some of that, and whoever navigates that better, whoever's the hungrier team, if Golden State was really thirsting after this three-peat and they want to continue, you know, their dynasty, you know, I see them winning. I'm going to pick them anyway in 6 or 7. But Toronto, if they can not be satisfied with just being in the finals, and it's a very real thing sometimes the first time you go, where you're just happy to have gotten there, then they have a chance. But if they're just happy to have gotten there, this could be a quick one.
And I think the big key for Toronto is their best player is Kawhi Leonard. And with him being the best player on their team, he plays he plays emotionless, right? Even though when they were down in that Milwaukee series, a lot of times guys would get tight, right? But when you look at your superstar player that been there now in the NBA Finals, that won an MVP, a Finals MVP, a guy that played multiple games with other great players in San Antonio and the team that was expected to win, that's a luxury to have. So even though the guys might be happy to be there, but when you look at Kawhi and he's all business from day one and even in the playoffs, good things can happen for your team.
Yeah, we saw him very businesslike, or rather Kawhi-like at NBA Finals Media Day. So the last time the Golden State Warriors played Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs, the Claw was getting buckets in the Western Conference Finals. Flashback to Game 1. Leonard dropping 26 points with his team up 25 at Oracle, 20 in the third quarter, and then that happened. Disaster struck. 8-minute third quarter, attempting a long two. Zaza Pachulia closed in on Kawhi. Landed on the big man's left foot, rolling already his tender ankle. He left the game. The Warriors came back, one of the biggest second-half deficits in recent history. But fast forward to now, after the Spurs got swept, then you take a look at the career timeline for Kawhi Leonard. So this NBA Finals serves as somewhat of a revenge tour for the Raptors star, even though he probably won't admit it, as we've heard from Kawhi Leonard. The journey for him certainly has been fantastic for We the North. Speaking of We the North, boy, you know, Jurassic Park, they must have been thinking, oh, it's nice Milwaukee has this Deer District kind of thing. But this was this morning up in Toronto. Fans already geeked up about their first finals in franchise history. So there we go. Guys that know a thing or two about the NBA Finals, Rip Hamilton and Raja Bell. So here we go. The Raptors-centric segment of our show here is how do they beat the Warriors? And Raja, I'll start with you. What's the one thing that you think Nick Nurse and company they have to do to really target this year?
Yeah, I think they really have to control the tempo and the style with which the game is played. If you're going to get up and down again and allow Golden State, not just Steph and Clay, who kind of thrive in that open, more free-flowing offensive style, but guys like Jordan Bell, guys like Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala, the guys who are better in transition. If you're going to allow that game to be played in transition all night, that speaks to Golden State having a better opportunity to win the game. Grind it down. You've got length. Rip alluded to the defensive player of the years. They have multiples. They have all defensive players scattered across that lineup. Pack it up. Allow people to get hands and forearms on some of those smaller guards and turn the game into a more grind-you-out type of half-court game. I think if they do that, they have a chance.
I would have to agree with Roger. The pace is number one. That's the key. Golden State is great when they're able to get in transition, play off each other, ball movement. That's the way that they get their rhythm. When Draymond Green can get that ball off the glass and push it and play the point forward, that makes Steph go, that makes Clay go, that makes their whole entire team go, especially with no Kevin Durant. You have to turn this into a grind-out game, a half-court game, and use and play that to your advantages. Because you know when Kawhi Leonard's on the floor defensively, he can pretty much control one side of the floor by himself defensively. You know, a lot of times guys don't want to go. It's like the safety position, like Deion Sanders back in the day. The quarterback just wouldn't throw to his side. That's the same type of effect that Kawhi Leonard has out there. And then I think for Toronto, their other guys got to come to play. The Fred Fleets, the Norman Powells, the Serge Ibaka's. They got to have a great series in this game because in order for them to get through it, Golden State is good enough defensively, and Steve Kerr is good enough coach to say, all right, we're going to try to take Kawhi Leonard out the game. So these other guys got to be able to hit shots.
And to that point, and you asked about Nick Nurse, Tommy, it's going to be imperative that he comes out with a game plan that's not heavy ISO for Kawhi early. Yeah, that's going to be your closer. Like, that's what you're going to do to win a game. But early in the game, you got to get some stuff going for those other guys so that they have a rhythm. They've touched the ball a little bit. Now they're in a flow to kind of supplement Kawhi down the stretch.
It's been interesting to see how he'll approach game one because we talked about on HQ yesterday, one of the big things that you really loved about Nick Nurse is that he has the ability to adapt and change, right? That's something that you really liked about his coaching style.
Yeah, and look, he's going to be put to the test this series too because, like I said, you'll come in and like the big thing with Golden State, aside from controlling tempo, is what are you going to do with either the pick and roll or the off-ball screens for both Steph and Clay, right? Are you going to be out? Are you going to have your big attached? Is he going to be up hard in a show and let your guard get back to run him off that three-point line? Or are you just going to switch it? And if that doesn't work, then where do you go? And I imagine no matter what he does, Golden State will eventually get a beat on it, and they'll counter, right? And they'll make you have to do something else, and that's when your mettle as a coach is proven, whether you can make the second adjustment to the adjustment that Golden State makes.
All right, guys, we're just getting news now that Demarcus Cousins, not Boogie, Demarcus Cousins officially active for Game 1. Again, originally listed as questionable. The news breaking right here on CBS Sports HQ. The former All-Star, of course, joining the super team out in Golden State. So, Rip, I'll start with you. Demarcus Cousins, active for Game 1, says what?
Well, like I said, he won't start. I think that he will play limited minutes. Already, when you're looking at from a big standpoint, all bigs are having trouble with the pace now in the NBA. Now teams are playing a lot faster. Now you got a guy like Demarcus Cousins arguably playing with the fastest team in the NBA right now, and just on the way that they're playing and how they're getting up the court. So I expect him to play limited minutes. But, this is a great matchup for him because when you look at the Toronto Raptors, they're going to want to play a grind-out game. They're not going to want to play fast. And on the other side, they got Marc Gasol. So for him, when you look at matchups and you look at the playoffs, it's all about matchups. So with Marc Gasol being on the floor, I can see Boogie Cousins getting probably between 15 to 18 minutes in Game 1, not probably playing extended minutes on the game because, like Draymond Green said, and we all know, it's hard to miss multiple games, the games that he missed, then come back in the NBA Finals and have a rhythm out there on the floor.
Raja, let me ask you, though, because Rip says you want to ease him in 15 to 18 minutes. But let me just throw out a hypothetical, because this is a Steve Kerr question, right? What if Boogie's playing as well as you could even expect, maybe exceeding your expectations, and you kind of need him in the fourth, and he's already maxed out at 18 minutes? What are you going to do?
No. Boogie's got to play. We're all chips in right now. We're trying to win. But I agree with Rip in the way you should approach this. I think that their advantage in this series, and we just talked about it, is pace and creating more pace, right? Boogie is just the opposite of that. Boogie's going to slow you down. So I wouldn't be trying to reintroduce Boogie in any real meaningful capacity other than just having an extra body to come in, play some minutes. Now, if Toronto is able to control the pace and we get into the fourth quarter and it is a grind you out kind of a game, now Boogie can be a factor because the game is slowed down a bit. He can play on the block. He has ISO capability. You can make through him to some degree. But that's a luxury that Golden State gets back when Boogie comes. That's not something that I would be looking to establish early in the game. I would be trying to keep that pace up.
One more topic here from a Raptors perspective, and I want to ask you guys, this is sort of a chicken or the egg, or how do you approach this? So you have a guy that has the experience in Danny Green, like a career 52%er in the finals, although he has been struggling. And Rip, you saw this when you covered the Eastern Conference Finals. And on the other side, you have Fred VanVleet, which we all say is a good player. He's the next tier type of guy, and he's been shooting lights out since he had his child was born. So the thing, though, and again, they'll make adjustments. They'll figure out what works. But going into Game 1, like, if you had to sort of game plan for one or the other, do you leave Danny Green knowing that he's been slumping, or do you try to crack down on Fred VanVleet? What would be your take?
Well, if you're the Toronto Raptors, Danny Green has played in big games his whole entire career. So for him, he understands that when you're in a shooting slump, You just got to keep on shooting. And when you got guys like Kawhi Leonard that still trusts his players out there, you got to understand Fred VanVleet was pretty much doing nothing in the first couple games of the Eastern Conference Finals. And I was one of them guys that say, hey, maybe you need to play Jeremy Lin. Maybe you need to play a bigger lineup and bring Norman Powell in and go bigger out there on the floor. But the one thing about Kawhi Leonard, he still got to his spots and found Fred VanVleet. And that one thing that told me that if Kawhi Leonard still trusts his teammates and still trusts his guys out on the floor, where he's still out there making passes. One game he had 9 assists, Kawhi Leonard, and a lot of them went to Fred VanVleet. You still got to trust your team. You got to trust the guys that have been there all season long. And Danny Green is a big-time player, like especially in big games. He's always been able to knock down big shots. So I say leave him in the starting lineup.
Yeah, the law of averages usually catches up, and he was cold in the last series, hadn't played well. But this is not foreign territory for him. Like he's played in a lot of NBA finals, and he plays big usually in NBA finals. I expect him to come out, Danny Green that is, and have a much better series. Fred VanVleet, I think it's one of those things like confidence is interesting, right? Like he clearly was shaken in last series, and even in the Sixers series where he wasn't really playing well. But he's found it now as well. So I think both of those guys are going to actually play pretty well in this series, especially if they keep allowing, and you just touched on it, they keep allowing Kawhi to get to his spot. That puts a lot of pressure on the defense. And now those guys, the Danny Greens, the Fred VanVleets, they don't have to make their own play. And I keep saying this, making your own play and shooting open shots are two different things. If Kawhi keeps getting to his spots and all those guys got to do is catch and shoot, I think both of them stay in a good rhythm. If you get that ball out of Kawhi's hands and they got to make plays, that could be a different story.
I said it. 52.5% career in the NBA Finals, but in that series against Milwaukee, 17+%. So that's all the tactical stuff. I mentioned we're wrapping up sort of the Raptors perspective, and then one more before we go to break, which is Kawhi Leonard. It's something that Masai Ujiri took a gamble on, and it has certainly paid off. A lot of the Eastern Conference teams, along with the Sixers, and even to a lesser degree the Celtics, and we know the Bucks, kind of all went in this year to try to get to where we, the North, is at right now. Rip, I'll start with you again, because you were there covering the series there. What stood out to you about Kawhi Leonard? Because he's sort of reminding us that he is a top 3 player in the league once again.
Yeah, I thought it was a great gamble now that they made it all the way to the NBA Finals. You got to think, with DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry, I don't think they get there with a younger 76ers team with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons coming into their own, adding Jimmy Butler to that team. And then you look at what Giannis was able to do in Milwaukee. I don't think they get past the Milwaukee Bucks if they don't have Kawhi Leonard, who definitely put his imprint on that game when Nick Nurse put Kawhi Leonard on Giannis for multiple minutes in that game. But I think it's a great gamble when you look at him now getting for Toronto Raptors to get all the way to the NBA Finals. This is what the country wanted. This is what all the fans wanted. If you just seen how hyped Jurassic Park is and Drake with his little antics on the sideline, this is what they just never thought could be possible. Now you got a guy like Kawhi Leonard that's there on your team. Cherish this moment. Take totally advantage of it. And if you get to keep him, that's great. If not, then so be it. But you got all the way here to the NBA Finals.
Yeah, gamble definitely worth it, win or lose at this point, because you're in the finals. You've never been there before. And you said cherish Kawhi. Yeah, cherish Kawhi if you're a Raptors fan, because I don't think either way he's coming back. I mean, look, if he loses, right, it was always a one-year rental,
yes,
and I was just buying time until I could get to where I wanted to go. And if he wins, he can say to Toronto, hey, I got you guys at the promised land. Like this, my obligation to you all has been fulfilled. I can ride off into the sunset and do whatever I want to do now. So in either case scenario, in my opinion, Kawhi's a free man.
Real quickly, you think he's going to be gone after the series or no?
I think he's going. Like Roger said, like
win or lose.
Win or lose, he's going. Like even if they win, like some people say, all right, if they win, he stays. But to beat Kawhi Leonard and win one in San Antonio and to be Finals MVP, and if they win one in Toronto, he will be Finals MVP.
Right.
So I don't think too many people will be mad at that.
All right, you guys both don't think that Kawhi Leonard will be back in a Raptors uniform. Will he come out on top with a championship? We'll wait and see. More to come. For the Golden State Warriors, they are trying to extend their dynasty, cement their place in history. 5th straight Finals appearance. They've gone back-to-back. 3 out of the last 4, now trying to make it another title there out in the East Bay. And as you take a look at the title history, it's all been LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. 4 straight Finals matchups. Oracle was the host for every single one of those NBA Finals. It'll be different this time around. For the first time in the Steve Kerr era, the Warriors are going to start on the road. Oh, let's take a Throwback Thursday NBA Finals edition.
Oh, is that a Roger Bell sighting?
Oh, you know it. 2001.
Oh,
No
the
bounce.
young legs right there.
No balance.
Stole game one in overtime, but got beat 4-1, and then Rip
Oh,
Hamilton.
okay. At least I ain't try to dunk.
Diesel's not going to come out and hedge on that or nothing. Just going to let you come off and shoot it.
That's why I came off of it
okay.
every time.
All right.
2001, 2004. By the way, Rip, you weren't here yesterday, but I was talking to Raja about those sleeves, those Sixer sleeves. I don't know if we'll ever see them again in the NBA Finals, the one that extend out past the shoulder.
No, that was a bad fashion statement right there. I don't even know what they were thinking at that time.
Look, this is out of pure just not knowing where I was at the time. Panic. Okay, take that.
Oh, with the left.
Yeah, look.
You guys don't get to overtime or win game one without you, Raja. So
Correct.
I know AI had 48, but you had an important 6.
Important 6, yes.
Yes.
Indeed. That's what I tell
And he
myself.
gave you the left, too.
All right, we are going to talk about the Warriors' blueprint for success, but let's go to Colin Ward-Henniger again out of the Bay Area with the news that Demarcus Cousins is active. So, Colin, again, you and I on HQ in recent days have been talking about what Boogie Cousins, doesn't like to be called Boogie anymore, Demarcus Cousins was looking like. There was a scrimmage, it's a shoot around. What did he look like in your eyes before making the trip to Toronto?
Yeah, it's hard to tell with a guy like Cousins because he's not, an explosive athlete to begin with. He does more of his work through his skill and his tiny quickness and things like that. But he did look good. He's, as Steve Kerr said, Demarcus Cousins is pain-free, and the biggest thing for him is his conditioning. So now with the news that he's active, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to start him or that they're going to be playing in big minutes. I would expect him to have a limited role off the bench, at least from what Steve Kerr has said in recent days. He said that, a guy his size can't just come back and suddenly play 35 minutes a game. So Cousins will, I doubt they would have made him active if they weren't going to play him at all. So I do expect to see him get some action. But as I said, I think his minutes will probably be limited off the bench.
All right, something to look out for tonight in Game 1. Raja Bell, Rip Hamilton back here in our Fort Lauderdale studios. Again, you guys have sort of alluded to a little bit earlier, sort of the good boogie versus the exposed boogie. So we've wrapped that up already. What about the Warriors? Rip, when you see what right now a Kevin Durant-less Warriors team is like, what do they need to do well to steal Game 1?
Well, I think they have to control the pace. I think pace is everything for them. They got to play fast. They got to try to get out in transition, get easy baskets, try to get, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are early rhythm because them two guys have to be efficient in this series. They can't go like they did in previous finals when they're playing against the Cleveland Cavaliers, especially last year, where one guy might go 8 for 25 and the other guy might go 4 for 18. You will not beat the Toronto Raptors playing like that way. They are probably one of the better defensive teams that they played against in the finals and probably in the last 5 years. At every position, they can guard, so they're going to have to play fast. Draymond Green, he's going to have to be more efficient as a scorer too, because I see them probably trying to make Draymond into a scorer, really denying Steph and Klay Thompson coming off screens and making him now being the decision maker, which is a great decision maker and a great passer, but is he a great scorer out on the floor? So I really think Steph and Klay, they got to be a lot more efficient on the floor.
Yeah, tempo is going to be really important. To your point earlier, Draymond rebounding is going to be important because that ignites their break. You got the ball in your point forward's hands. He's able to get it up the court, get everybody else involved and get him a flow. If it grinds down into a half court, I would say early focus on Klay Thompson, getting him off. You know Steph can go for 0 points in the first half, turn around and drop 33 in the second half. Klay gets streaky. So if I'm going to err on the side of having them spoon feed one of them early, I'm going to try to see if I can get Klay going, knowing that Steph is going to figure out a way. He'll have the ball in his hands, so on and so forth. And then have a backup plan for Kawhi. Mm-hmm. What you going to do with Kawhi? If he's coming off, if he's knocking down those shots, if other guys are supplementing with offense, are you going to continue to let him do it to you like Milwaukee did, like Philly did to some degree? I am going to make other people beat me. So having a backup plan, if that's not already your plan, is going to be imperative. What do you do with Kawhi if he's cooking? Do you get it out of his hands?
And how healthy is Andre Iguodala? I think that's big key, too, because he's another ball handler that they have on the floor.
Yeah, we talk about defensively going up against Kawhi Leonard. Again, Kawhi only played in one of the 2 regular season games, predominantly guarded by Kevin Durant, a little bit of Klay, and very, very little Iggy. So we'll have to wait and see. Iggy was a little bit hurt there in the conference final. Colin Ward-Henniger, let's go back to you and talk about Draymond Green a little bit. I'll have the guys break down his game, but there was talk that Steve Kerr mentioned that Draymond dropping a few pounds. We're seeing him kind of back to his Swiss Army life days of the 2015-16 seasons. Did you see this coming? Because I didn't notice it that much on the court on Draymond dropping some pounds and playing like he's back in college again.
Yeah, it started towards the end of the regular season. Draymond, continually said that this was a very frustrating regular season for him. He couldn't quite get healthy, had a foot thing and a couple other nagging injuries. So he really dedicated himself, ended up losing about 25, 30 pounds heading into the playoffs. And Kerr said you can really see that on the court, just with his quickness and being able to push the ball, particularly in that Portland series, just running the ball off makes and misses. It's really ignited that Warriors offense. So Draymond also said that, before the playoffs, he kind of made a commitment to not argue with the refs as much, to kind of mature a little bit. He said that he felt he would watch tape and see himself arguing, and he would be disgusted by the way that he looked. So Draymond's on a whole new level of focus. I think that it was helped by the Durant injury to really lock him in. So, he's looking great physically and obviously playing what Steve Kerr calls probably the best basketball of his career.
High praise there from Steve Kerr. Raja, peak Draymond, what's that like on the court?
Yeah, look, the numbers that they just had up, the 13.6, they're not the numbers that beat teams. It's the 9.9 rebounds and the 8.2 assists that take its toll on other teams. The assists allow him to get out. The rebounds allow him to get out in transition and kind of fuel that pace that we talk about. It allows all those other guys to add 4 to 5, 6 points to their point total. That's when they hang up a number that you can't compete with. And then, the assists, it's tough for a defender because Rip touched on Toronto making Draymond have to score the ball. But Rip knows this. When you get a guy going to the basket, even if you're told in your pregame, don't suck in, when you see him with a free run to the basket, human nature takes over, and you want to kind of, commit to the ball to take away the layup, and then he's kicking it out. So what I really love about Draymond is his just pushing of the pace. He gets the ball off the rim. He's on a dead sprint. If you don't stop him, he's going to go try to lay it up. But as soon as he draws somebody, he's looking to get off of that ball. So it will be a test of Toronto's game plan and execution thereof as to whether or not they'll make him try to score the ball and not allow him to have those 8.5, 9 assists a game.
We haven't had a lot of conversation. Maybe we should, but we'll have it right now. Klay Thompson, right? Splash brother. He did not make All-NBA, and the money stuff and the future stuff will take care of itself, I think. But how important will he be? Rip, you're a shooter. You know well. He had his struggles in December, right before Christmas, like really low. Even people ask him about it. Came out of that funk. He's also a plus defender as well. How important does he need to play, maybe even above what we've seen so far?
Well, first of all, yeah, when playing in the 82-game season, it's like riding a roller coaster. You're going to have your ups and you're going to have your downs, but when you're the best team in basketball, everything is going to be exploited. Like, when you have a few games where you miss some, everybody's going to make a big deal about it just because you're playing on national TV pretty much every other night. But Klay is very important to the Golden State Warriors, especially now with no KD. Now he falls back into the Robin role. He's been used to being a Robin role, playing that to Steph Curry for his duration there in Golden State. So expectation-wise, I expect him to still go out there and be great. But Klay just doesn't impact the game on the offensive end. He impacts on the defensive end too, guarding the best player out on the floor, doing all the little things that he has to do. When KD came to this team, the guy that really had to take a back seat was Klay Thompson. But his style of play and how he gets his shot off, coming off curls and coming off screens, he's still going to be able to do that. It all depends on how the Toronto Raptors guard that. Are they going to blitz him every time he comes off the pin down? Anytime he's in transition, is the guy going to say, all right, I'm not going to go to the offensive glass. I'm just going to stay attached to Klay Thompson, so that will eliminate his easy baskets on the other end. So it all depends on how the Toronto Raptors are going to defend him and Steph Curry.
All right. We've given you the tactical stuff, the storyline stuff. Now it's time for the betting stuff, the sports gambling arena. And as you take a look, Raptors laying a point. The over-under is now dipped. It's at 213. Also a series price. You got to lay more than 3-1 to get Golden State there. Toronto, you get them plus 250. And then there's Finals MVP, the betting favorite being Stephen Curry at minus 140. Tommy Tran back here with Rip Hamilton, Raja Bell. We got Reed Forgrave in Toronto covering the finals. We got Colin Ward-Henniger out in the East Bay with Dub Nation. We got our Vegas insider, Todd Furman. Todd, I'm going to start with the Boogie Cousins, Demarcus Cousins news. He's going to be active. How much do you think that impacts the line where you are?
It'll impact the line absolutely nothing, in my opinion, the way the number has gone. public perception more the factor than anything else. You look at how the Warriors have performed with Boogie on the court, plus 4.1 points per 100 possessions compared to their opposition. That's actually down from better than 8. I think Cousins becomes a defensive liability until he gets up to game speed. And I would actually be surprised, even with him being active tonight, if Steve Kerr elected to use him for more than 5 to 7 minutes just to spell some of those bench guys.
Todd, the public looks like it's on Golden State right now. I want to ask you, because you're the perfect person, you educate us on Sportsline all the time. People love to tail trends, especially free ones given out on Twitter. We got to filter those things out. So you have one where, like going back to 2004, Game 1 host does very well, ATS, but you also have the Raptors, who traditionally aren't very good in Game 1 in the playoffs. How do you manage that, and how do you view Game 1 tonight?
I think you want to take every game in a vacuum. Trends are great. They make for excellent talking points, especially through social media on shows like this, Tommy. But you want to break down some of the X's and O's and pay a little bit more attention to what the market is doing for each individual game. And what we've seen here, as you mentioned, Golden State opened right around a pick 'em. Initially got bet up to 1.5, and we've seen money from professional bettors coming on the Raptors, pushing this number as far as 1.5 in some spots. I think for me, I look at this series dynamic, and Golden State should be going to Toronto with one thing in mind. If they get a split, they steal home court advantage back, and it puts them in a great position to win their 3rd title in 3 years, where Toronto knows they have to get off to a quick start. Take full advantage of some of the potential rust that could be evident in Golden State's game after being laid off for 11 days. I think this is going to be a hostile atmosphere, a lot of energy, a lot of excitement. Kawhi Leonard has to be the calming force. And ultimately, I think it's the Raptors that get off to a quick start and really believe they'll go into the half with a lead of maybe 5 to 7 points.
All right, you've laid out there for Game 1. How about the series? When you take a look at the series prices, if you like Golden State, is it too expensive? What's the play here?
I don't think they're too expensive at all, but since I like Toronto for Game 1, I would hold off on laying Golden State for the series. Ultimately, I believe the Warriors' pedigree will get them over the hump. They'll win another NBA championship, but I think you can get a better price if Toronto were to go out there and get the victory tonight. That being said, Tommy, I've seen a lot of professional bettors, oddly enough, betting the Raptors in Game 1, but betting the Warriors almost as a de facto hedge in a series price, willing to lay that price, figuring they can come back over the top, and that there may not be a direct correlation between a Game 1 result and who ultimately wins the Larry O'Brien Trophy.
All right, we're taking a look at the Warriors-Raptors series odds, and then there's that conversation about MVP. The last 2 for Golden State have been won by Kevin Durant. He will not play in Game 1. Now, the market's telling us that Stephen Curry right now is the betting favorite. Translate that for us as we take a look at what Vegas is telling us. Who do you like? Where's some value here potentially?
Well, I think not only are they telling us that Steph Curry, who we know is the catalyst for Golden State when Durant's sidelined, but Durant being priced at 20-1 says he's a long shot to even make an impact at all in this series if he's able to suit up. We go back a couple of years, and I'd love to say that I was on Andre Iguodala when he cashed at 125-1. Those opportunities are few and far between. So if you don't want to back Steph Curry, thinking that he's going to get one of the last milestones that he can achieve in what's been an outstanding resume thus far in his NBA career, maybe you look at a guy like Draymond Green. Back-to-back triple-doubles to close out the Blazers. We know he's kind of that Swiss Army knife for what Golden State wants to do. Not only his ability to score the basketball, but to start the break where he's actually the odds-on favorite to lead Game 1 in assists. You look at his rebounding total that's set at 10.5 nearly every single night. Green, for me, makes the most sense. And the reason I don't want to make a compelling case for Clay is because I think he's going to see Kawhi Leonard on him quite a bit, as Toronto is going to look to at least take away one of the Splash Brothers to the best of their ability.
Todd, thank you very much. Don't go too far. We're going to get your series predictions and picks in just a second here, but let's wrap things up with the keys to the game. Raja, I'll start with you. Keys to Game 1.
Yeah, obviously the tempo, what numbers are going to be played around. If we can get it up and down, that favors Golden State. If we can grind it out, that obviously favors Toronto. You know, if you are either the Raptors or Golden State, you want to get the ball out of the guy's hand that makes the other teams go. So for Toronto, try to get that ball out of Steph's hands as much as you can. Try to keep it out of his hands, and if you're Golden State, try to keep that ball, you know, out of Kawhi's hands. And then for Toronto, we talked about this before. Getting those other guys involved, they're the question mark for Toronto. You know what you get out of Kawhi. Getting them involved early in the game, having them in the rhythm, the Danny Greens, the Fred VanVleets, the Kyle Lowrys, they've got to play well, so you got to get them involved early.
And for me, I would have to say the pace. Like for Toronto, they got to be able to try to keep this in a half-court game. For Golden State, they got to try to play fast. That's where they're able to get the shots in transition. That's how they get all the threes up. That's how they're great defensively, getting deflections, getting passing lanes, trying to get easy possessions. Limit Kawhi Leonard. I think in order, like when you looked at Milwaukee Bucks, they were able to make Kawhi, force him to score in a crowd, force him to score in ISO situations, try to limit other guys from scoring the ball and put the onus on him. And Klay Thompson and Steph Curry, they got to be efficient. They got to be able to make shots. In the past, in the last couple of years, they haven't been able to make shots in the NBA Finals. They got to be efficient. That's the reason why they go, especially with no Kevin Durant.
All right, the consensus from both of you guys, by the way, if the over-under is at 213, 214 and a spread, it's 1. That means the game's 107, 106. You guys say if it's lower in the 100s, favors Toronto, 110 plus favoring Golden State. We've got all our guys here going to give out their picks. We'll go game 1, series MVP. We'll start with Rip, then Raja, then our guys out there. So give me game 1. Who do you like to win?
Toronto Raptors.
Yeah, I think Toronto, human nature, they need it more.
All right, Reed?
Yeah, Raptors in game 1, but Warriors in the series.
Colin, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to be the only voice of dissent here. Maybe I'm too close to the team, but I'm picking the Warriors. I think that they're rested and they're excited and they're ready to go.
I'm going to take the Raps in game 1, but I would split my bet. First half and full game, just kind of insurance. I think the Warriors win another NBA title, and we're talking about MVP. I'll take the value that's out there. Draymond Green would be my choice.
All right, Todd's already thrown in his MVP pick as well. What about you, Rip?
I'm going with Draymond Green. I think he's playing great basketball right now. His contract is coming up in a couple years. He wants to show that why he's one of the most important players in this roster, and this is a perfect stage to show the world.
Yeah, because I'm picking Golden State to actually win the series, I think they cannot do that without Steph Curry, even if Draymond is great. And I think sentiment will get Steph an MVP if KD's not there. So I'm going to go Golden State and Steph Curry winning the MVP.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely going to be Steph Curry. I think the Warriors win the series, so I think there leaves almost no choice. If Kevin Durant's limited, which it sounds like he will be, it's going to be Steph to win the MVP, his first one.
And, you know, when I said I made a case for Draymond, guys, I think the price makes the most sense here. When you try and figure it out, Steph Curry fills the narrative. But I can't lay $1.35 on Steph. I just don't think that would be enough to get me to the window.
Draymond, I think, is the pick. I thought I was being all creative when I wrote that on CBSSports.com. Apparently not. I mean, the type of defense that he's playing right now is all world. He called himself the best defensive basketball player ever the other day. Might be a little bit too far, but there's certainly an argument to be made. So Draymond Green, triple-double machine, Warriors in 6.
All right, let's wrap things up here in terms of all of our experts and reporters here and their selections. Finals MVP. You got a lot of Draymond Greens and a couple of Stephen Currys, with Raja and Colin Ward-Henniger going with the regular season MVPs that Stephen Curry has. Also the only unanimous selection. The other guys going in with the Swiss Army knife. In terms of the finals game 1 predictions, again with the Raptors laying the 1. We got a lot of We the North right there, but the Warriors to Reed and Colin. I want to thank everybody. Todd Furman, Colin Ward-Henniger, Reed Forgrave, Raja Bell, and Rip Hamilton. I'm Tommy Tran. Make sure to catch CBS Sports HQ throughout the day. We'll have you covered, getting you ready for Game 1 of the NBA Finals.